Okay, knock that shit off.
Well, guys, I've got a killer headache today because, once again, my idea to prepare for this video turned out to not be a very good one. But it's time to get Rebooking WrestleMania over with. The final segment, number 1 on the countdown. And let me start off by saying that the only reason I didn't give the number 1 spot to WrestleMania 11 is because I felt like the WWF/WWE learned from their mistakes that they made in 1995. For better or worse, doesn't matter the quality of the show, I can honestly say that every WrestleMania since 1995 has been better than 11. So it gives off the impression that the WWF learned from their mistakes and they did their best not to produce another show as bad as 11. 13 was close, but not quite. But number 1 on the countdown is not one moment where they made a mistake. It's not one bad show. It's 3 cases where they made the same mistake 3 times in the last 5 years. Originally, these 3 moments were going to get their own spots in the countdown, but then I realized, you know what? This is the same thing over and over again. And it's all recent. I don't know how you make this mistake so many times in such a short span. It gives off the impression that the WWE either isn't learning from their mistakes or they just don't realize that they're making mistakes at all. And what it is them not allowing their strong heel champions to head into WrestleMania as the champion. They cut their legs out from under their strong heel characters. And I'm not talking about having a heel head into WrestleMania just for the sake of having a heel champion. Kind of like what they did with Jericho last year, where they just put the belt on him in February because somebody had to hold it. There wasn't much more justification outside of that. No, these are 3 cases where the WWE created what I felt was the best heel in the business. A strong character to build your show around and ultimately defend the title at WrestleMania and suffer their big fall at WrestleMania. That would have made for the best story, I think. But they didn't do that. They pulled the rug out from under their guys and knocked their strong heel characters back down the ladder for reasons that aren't apparent to me. And yeah, let's get into the first moment. Now let's take a quick look at Edge's rise to the top. Dude won Money in the Bank at WrestleMania 21. Then he has that whole situation with Matt Hardy and Lita, which was a real situation where he basically fucked Lita and Matt Hardy ended up losing his job. Then they worked it into a storyline where he got the best of Matt Hardy again in the storyline. So you had this whole situation where he basically stole a guy's girl, fucked her, did whatever, and never got his comeuppance for it. Then he went through the whole situation with Flair where, again, he mocked him, humiliated him, beat him up, never suffered any comeuppance for it. And then he cashed in the Money in the Bank, stole the title from John Cena, who had just gotten his ass kicked in an Elimination Chamber match, and was now the champion. Holy shit, you have the hottest heel in the company. I mean, forget the fact that his presentation was fantastic. I mean, the Rated R Superstar character was unbelievably well handled up to that point. You had a heel who had suffered no comeuppance. And you could have gotten so much more mileage out of that. I felt like Edge needed to be the champion heading into WrestleMania based on that alone. It's like, if you're going to set him up for a fall, because you've got like pretty much a year's worth of build-up into this guy. If you're going to set him up for a fall, set it up for WrestleMania, where it'll mean the most and you can get the best storylines out of it. What did they do? Edge lost the title in 3 weeks to John Cena at the Royal Rumble, which made me think, what the hell was the point of putting the belt on him in the first place? It was just a waste. And, I've had people tell me, it's like, well, Edge wasn't ready yet. Bullshit. I've already mapped it out. He was the best character to go with. Best presentation, best creative handling up to that point. And I just felt like Edge was the best one to go with. And he was a great worker. He could have handled a main event spot. I think he would have been great. But okay, even if he wasn't, then why'd you put the belt on him at all? Why even, raise my hopes that you were going to do something cool only to destroy it 3 weeks later? Now, what did they end up doing at this WrestleMania? Well, we had Edge versus Foley, which why is Edge in the lower spot getting a rub from Foley? He should be the fucking main eventer. Granted, they went out there and stole the show, but and that's saying a lot considering their feud was basically just a rehash of what Foley did with Orton a couple years earlier. And in my opinion, wasn't as good. But there you go. They went out there and had the best match anyway. But what was the main event? What was the main event of this WrestleMania? John Cena defended the belt against who? Who? This guy who I have nitpicked, mocked, trashed, whatever, all throughout this Rebooking WrestleMania countdown. Whose main event am I going to rag on again? Guess who? Triple H. That motherfucker. That horrible motherfucker who has had some of the worst WrestleMania main events ever. Here's the last one that's going to be on the countdown. His match with Cena at WrestleMania 22, in my opinion, was a train wreck. I know some people really liked it. I thought the match was a fucking train wreck. Number one, the entrances were stupid. Why did Cena come out dressed as a gangster? Why did Triple H come out dressed as Conan? I don't know. It was stupid. This wasn't WrestleMania Goes Hollywood. They were about a year too late for that. See, it's not like 9 where I defended the togas because, they're in Caesar's palace, so I can understand the method to the madness. I don't know why they did this. It was stupid. Then we get to the match that didn't really have a babyface because the fans hated Cena. They were chanting, "Fuck you, Cena." So, yeah, whatever. It was just this neutrality versus neutrality setup that we had, and it was boring. I didn't care about the match at all whatsoever. It took me 2 sittings to watch the entire match because I fell asleep the first time. That's how bored I was. And I just didn't give a damn. Also, this match also created that stupid spot where they trade the punches. Boo! Yay! Boo! Yay! Which I see so much of now, and I hate it because it's just so hokey. And, 2 people in a fight wouldn't do that. And I realize, it's professional wrestling and there's a lot of room for suspension of disbelief, but that just seems like an obvious, hey, play to the crowd type deal. When you should be, worrying about... Right, you're not convincing me by doing that spot that you're actually trying to win a match. That you're obviously just trying to get a reaction out of the crowd, and I hate it. But yeah, and nothing changed anything. Nothing big happened during this match. It was just Cena wins, and that's it. Huzzah! I just didn't care. I really felt like Edge should have been the constant in whatever their main event plans for. What should the main event have been? I don't know. Edge versus Cena, Edge versus RVD, Edge versus Triple H, Edge versus Cena and RVD in a 3-way, Edge versus Cena, Triple H in a 3-way, Edge versus Cena versus RVD versus Triple H in a 4-way. I don't know. Whatever the main event plan was, it should have included Edge. Edge should have been the constant, whatever those plans were, and they didn't do it, and that's a huge mistake on the WWE's part, but whatever. Now, this was a weird one. I have no idea what happened here or what the thought process was that went into this. But Chris Jericho, in the latter half of 2008, in my opinion, had become, again, the best heel in the wrestling business. His promos were great. His character change was great. His feud with Shawn Michaels just put him over the top as this asshole character. And it worked. I felt like it really, really worked. And Jericho was having the best matches in the company anyway, so... Again, you had a great worker combined with a great character, and that just really worked. And then he stole the title from CM Punk the way he did. And they could have gotten mileage out of a feud there, which they didn't do. They blew that on Raw. But, yeah, Jericho should have been the long-term champion heading into WrestleMania 25, and that's how they should have planned it. What did they do? They built him up to the ladder match with Shawn Michaels, where he finally beat Michaels, retained the title, and that was great. Okay, good. You did that right. Good for you. Then what did they do next? Very next pay-per-view, he loses the title to Batista. Okay, why? But wait a minute. Next night on Raw, he wins the title back from Batista. So I was like, okay, they learned from their mistake. They're gonna get Jericho to Mania. Nope. John Cena has to come back from injury and beat him at the very next pay-per-view. So they jobbed him out to Batista, and then they put the belt back on him just so they could job him out to John Cena. Why this was the plan, I don't know. Now, I understand it. Okay, John Cena and Batista are your boys. I understand it. They're your poster boys, whatever. I don't, not the biggest fan of those guys, but I get it. I understand it. But if you're going to job him out to one of those two, could you at least get some mileage out of it and make it worth something rather than just rushing it to the next pay-per-view and just squashing this great heel character that you created? I don't understand why they decided to do this. If you're going to have Cena beat him, couldn't you have built it all the way to Mania and made it worth something? What did you end up doing at WrestleMania 25 instead? That three-way match that no one gave a damn about. John Cena, Edge, and Big Show built around this stupid love triangle that no one gave a shit about, everybody thought was stupid, and ultimately created a meaningless match where really the only good thing that anybody had to say about it was the effort of the wrestlers trying to make that match work. It's just, the storyline was stupid, and they had a natural storyline to work with Chris Jericho. Have him face Cena or Batista or CM Punk or whoever at WrestleMania and have him drop the title there. Get some mileage out of that character. They didn't do that. And it was bizarre. It really was. But whatever. Let's get into the final one. Well, you all have heard me talk about this one many times before. I feel like that CM Punk should have gone into WrestleMania 26 as the World Heavyweight Champion. And I felt like they were building up John Morrison as the guy to face him and maybe even ultimately defeat him. And I think that would have been the more interesting route to take. You have two interesting characters. Punk's heel, straight edge character, especially following the feud with Hardy, was amazingly well handled. And like I said it with Edge, I said it with Jericho, they created the hottest heel character in the business with CM Punk. And by going in this direction. And I felt like Morrison was being set up to face him, and I think they could have had a great match together at WrestleMania. And I felt like that's what they were going for, based on what I was seeing on television. Morrison actually won the IC title when the IC title actually meant something. I mean, come on. But then Hell in a Cell rolls around. Taker wins the title, and the whole Vince conspiracy of him helping Punk stay on top, that got thrown to the wayside. Punk sunk like a rock. It was just a mess. And I don't know what happened. If you believe the report that Undertaker kind of tattletaled on Punk for saying something mean about Cena, and that's what happened. Punk was being punished. If that's what happened, which I'm not sure if the story's true. I have no idea. But if that's the case, then that's pretty weak. I think it's like, wow, you're going to ruin your show just to teach Punk a lesson. But, I mean, they did ruin their show. Taker went on to have, like, this pointless title reign that didn't really amount to anything. People defended and say, but yeah, we're finally going to get the match with Jericho and Taker. I was like, well, number one, that doesn't have to be a title match. And number two, they wasted it on SmackDown with almost no build-up. So I hope it was worth ruining the show, just the storyline direction of the show, just to get that one match. But yeah, I really didn't like how this was handled at all whatsoever, and it should have been Punk and Morrison at Mania 26. What we got instead, and this is where I'm going to get into, I talked about it a few videos ago when I talked about the DX versus Hart Dynasty match that I planned out. By doing that match and this match, the Punk-Morrison title match, WrestleMania 26 is going to be rebooked entirely. And that's not because WrestleMania 26 was a bad show. It wasn't. But just out of necessity and just the situations that I created here, the whole card needs to be restructured. So I'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, what we got instead was Edge and Jericho, which I thought would be a good match, but I wasn't really a fan of it. I gotta be honest. It was a very blasé match, I felt. I mean, it wasn't terrible, but the match just didn't feel special, and it didn't help that they completely ruined Edge's character by making him Mr. Spear, which I don't understand what they were going for there. I've criticized the WWE for their constant repetition and how they like to pound messages into people's skulls so they'll repeat things over and over and over again. That might have been the prime example. They're like, oh, say Spear 100 times in a row, and the fans will get attached to it, but no, not really. It just made Edge look stupid. And like he was unable of communicating like a normal human being. But yeah, I was not a fan of that match. I felt like Cena and Batista was the better match. And you're talking to a guy who normally prefers Edge and Jericho over Cena and Batista any day of the week, but that night, Cena and Batista had the better match. Sorry. And that one wasn't even like that great of a match, but it was better than Edge and Jericho. So yeah, WrestleMania 26 is going to be completely restructured here. So here's my card, and Tell me what you think. All right, I got Punk and Morrison as the World Heavyweight title match. I got Cena and Batista can stay the same. I got the DX versus Hart Dynasty with Bret Hart as special guest enforcer. I talked about that a few videos ago. So there's that. And I've got the Legacy 3-Way can stay the same. Money in the Bank, a couple guys are going to get switched out, but keep Money in the Bank. For Undertaker's streak, put him up against Rey Mysterio. I think that would have been an interesting match. Just because it's two, upper tier guys. Undertaker's obviously the legend, but Rey Mysterio is pretty high up on the ladder himself, and I think it would have been an interesting dynamic. And they worked with each other at the Royal Rumble, and it wasn't bad. So Rey Mysterio is kind of like the ultimate underdog anyway, so maybe they could have built him as being like the ultimate underdog that might be able to finally end the streak. I don't know. I'm just saying, either do the match with Rey or do a match between Undertaker and Sheamus, just because I don't have anything else for Sheamus, and they kind of forced him into things with his Rush title win, so that would have been alright, I guess. And one other big match that I would have done at WrestleMania 26 would have been for the tag team titles, Edge and Christian taking on the champions Chris Jericho and Big Show. Now, I felt like something between Edge and Jericho needed to happen at this WrestleMania, because that's what was set up the year before when Edge got injured. But they did it as a World Heavyweight title match, and Jericho kind of won the title in February, so he wasn't really a long-term champion, so they didn't get as much mileage out of a world title feud as they could have. But, if you recall, the feud started with them as World Tag Team Champions, and Edge had to drop out, and Jericho got himself, quote-unquote, a better partner in Big Show. I think they should have kept the tag titles centric to the feud. Let Jericho carry the titles all the way from the summer all the way until WrestleMania, and yes, I would have had him beat DX at TLC just to just to keep their ball rolling. And when Edge makes his return, he comes back and he says that he wants to beat Jericho for the tag team titles, and he's got himself a partner. Now, who could they have gotten for Edge to be his partner? Oh, Christian! Edge and Christian reunite at WrestleMania 26 to take on Chris Jericho and the Big Show for the tag titles. There you go. A tag title match with some long-term build-up and some meaning behind it. With a second tag team match between DX and Hart Dynasty that would have had a long-term storyline behind it. 2 tag team matches with meaning behind it? Pfft, nobody wants to see that. But yeah, that's kind of my rebooked WrestleMania 26, and it tied in nicely to my whole discussion here about heel champions not being allowed to head into WrestleMania. So, yeah. Now, some people might just say that I'm being a mark for these guys, and it's true. I'm a big fan of Edge, I'm a big fan of Jericho, and I'm a big fan of CM Punk, and I felt like they got raw deals those particular instances where they were the hottest characters in the company, and they weren't really taken to the level that they should have been in those instances. People have told me, it's like, well, you should get over it because all 3 of those guys ended up doing fine to some degree. Edge obviously became a major 20-time world champion or whatever. Jericho would go on to do a few other things that were really good. And Punk right now, I think, is involved in one of the better, if not the best feuds heading into WrestleMania 27 with Randy Orton. And that's all true, but, that's them. That's what they do. The cream rises to the top. You can pull the rug out from under them, and they'll probably find a way to make something else work. Jericho became fucking bulletproof by the time he left again. I mean, that guy you could put him in almost any situation and he could make it one of the best parts of the show. And that's what they do. They're just great talents, and they can make anything they're put in work. What I'm complaining about here is not so much their mistreatment, even though I do feel like they were mistreated. I'm talking about the best possible stories they could have told for these WrestleManias. They opted not to tell, and I don't know why. Any human being looking at this objectively would tell you that Edge was the best option for WrestleMania 22. Jericho should have been a long-term champion following his feud with Shawn Michaels. CM Punk should have been the champion heading into WrestleMania 26. And they didn't get the proper amount of mileage out of those characters. It was like, you did it with JBL, and I sort of enjoyed JBL as champion, but, these guys were better than him, I think, and you could have gotten a lot more out of those guys heading into their respective WrestleManias, and they didn't do it. It's just a matter of not telling the right story and not taking advantage of great opportunities when you have them, and not maximizing the potential of your strong characters that you created. And that's a problem that I hope that WWE fixes. I mean, they didn't screw over Miz. They didn't screw him over too much. He didn't lose the belt to Lawler, thank God. But it'll take a few years for me to believe that WWE's truly learned from these mistakes. They have to show a track record of doing these things correctly. But yeah, that is the end of Rebooking WrestleMania. Thank the Lord, because these things were kind of killing me. But I hope you all enjoyed them, and I'll see you all later.